An EU player who was dropped by his duo that he moved to North America for, and a controller player who had never placed higher than 9th in a grand finals. Nobody had them as their pick to win it all, but could they really make the impossible happen? But this story doesn't start there, and really, it's not just one story. It's two completely different paths that somehow led to the exact same moment. The first part of this unexpected duo is Veno. After a disappointing Globals 2025 in France, where Veno, Vico, and Flixie, viewed as one of the best trios in the world, only placed 14th as they were contested at their drop of Canyon Crossing. That being said, in the games they made it off spawn, they performed well, and Veno stocks were still at a really high point here. Immediately after Globals, we saw the announcement of the reunion of one of the scariest duos of all time, Veno and one of the current global champions, Queasy. For those who don't know, Veno and Queasy had the greatest grand finals performance of all time, winning 6 out of 12 games on EU, the hardest region in the world. This reunion didn't really work out though, as they were at different stages in their careers where both of them really wanted to play Fortnite their own ways. So they split, and we then saw Veno team up with Chino, the player who had the most eliminations at Globals in 2025, and was generally viewed as the next best fragger in the world by the community. And Veno and Chino hit the ground running. In their first tournament together, they placed first in a Performance Eval Cup, and then came second in a Div Cup Finals, and then came fourth in the next Performance Eval, seemingly cementing themselves as one of the best teams on EU. They continued to have strong placements together, but unfortunately, didn't make finals in the final Div Cup of the season. While they still looked really strong heading into the Simpsons miniseason, Chino ended up dropping Veno to go and play with Pablo Wingu, a fellow Dane, and his teammate from one of the scariest trios of all time last year. This left Veno without a teammate though, and it felt like a lot of the top options had already been taken on EU. Well, we'd heard some rumblings about a potential crazy decision Veno might make, and on November 26, 2025, Veno tweeted out, "Miss me NA?" with a picture of him and Cold duoing, one of the greatest fraggers of all time. Veno had previously come to NA and played with Clix in Chapter 5, where they ended up with a respectable 4th place in Grand Finals, and him teaming up with Cold, viewed as the best fragger on NA Central, put him as one of the 2 favorites to an FNCS on NA Central, alongside who else but Peterbot and Pollo. This felt like a huge opportunity for Veno, given the current options he felt he had on EU, as getting to play with the top fragger on the region was a great motivator to travel the Atlantic Ocean for 0 ping on Central. Not only that, Veno had the chance to become the first player ever to win an FNCS on both major regions, NA Central and EU, an insane accomplishment. Once Veno was able to sort out his visa issues to legally travel to the US, on February 8th, Veno arrived to duo with Cold. They started out decently, winning a Performance Evaluation Cup and placing 4th in their first Division Cup Finals, but there was an important factor that I hadn't mentioned. See, this first Reload Esports World Cup qualifier had already happened the day before Veno came to NA, and Cold had to play with someone else for it to not waste a chance to win a lot of money and qualify for the LAN. Well, Cold played with Rapid, an IGL who had been playing out of his mind in Chapter 7, racking up insane placements, and him and Cold actually went on to win the first EWC qualifier, qualifying them for LAN and locking them in as Reload teammates. While Cold and Veno were still a team for Battle Royale, for any Reload events Cold and Rapid were playing together. Rapid clearly was in Cold's ear, waiting for any moment to strike to play with Cold in Battle Royale after a bad performance due to their immediate success. Well, after a 7th and 15th place in consecutive Div Cup Finals for Cold and Veno, it happened. Veno was dropped on his head, as Cold and Rapid officially teamed up for both Battle Royale and Reload. But it seemed this might actually work out in Veno's favor. See, Peterbot and Pollo had not been performing well, with their Div Cup Finals performances including a 9th, an 11th, and a 32nd, and Peter vocally claiming he didn't want to IGL in this meta. Well, it seemed like all the stars aligned for a moment here, as one of the greatest IGLs of all time happened to have just been dropped. So on the night of this fated Div Cup, we saw the announcement of Peterbot and Veno for all Battle Royale tournaments. This team had the potential to be one of the greatest duos of all time, the consensus best player of all time in Peterbot, and an IGL obsessed with playing perfect Fortnite in Veno. There was another problem though. Peterbot and Pollo had to queue for one final tournament together for the foreseeable future, as they had qualified for the second Reload EWC Finals, which was taking place the next day, right after the Div Cup. And in classic Peterbot and Pollo fashion, they did this.
Target out Pollo, but he shockwaves up again, finally falling down. He gets the elimination there too.
Down they come now to kind of seal the deal here off to the side. I mean, just look at the eliminations, trying to work their way to a 17 bomb.
This could be a back-to-back-to-back win for Peterbot and Pollo.
And also potential first place spot for that big prize at 74 points. What can they do? It would take a devastating mistake here from Peterbot to give them a chance, but no, he finds one. He's looking for the second, and can he?
Peterbot and Pollo won, winning 4 out of the 8 games, and how can you split up after a performance like that? Just like that, Peterbot and Pollo were back together. Cold and Rapid were officially duoing, and Veno, again, left with nobody. It felt like people were forgetting just how good Veno was, one of the GOATs of the game who placed 1st, 2nd, and 6th in Grand Finals on EU last year, left out to dry. While all of this has been happening, thousands of miles across the Atlantic Ocean, up-and-coming controller pro Curve was watching globals taking place in France from back in the United States. Curve placed 9th in the first 2 trio FNCSs in 2025, and very recently he'd placed 12th in the last Grand Finals, only placing 2 spots outside of qualifying for his first globals with his trio of Josh Raley and Tyler. While it was surely disappointing he didn't make the LAN, this was a good year for Curve. He made all 3 Grand Finals, as he'd only made 1 before, and had respectable places in all of them. But coming into Chapter 7, most of the attention from his trio had gone to his teammate, Josh Raley. Josh sort of became the poster boy for up-and-coming Fortnite pros, gaining a lot of followers, getting to play some tournaments with Peterbot himself, ending up duoing with Diamzo, one of the best players on NA Central, and lots of content was made about how good he is and how good he was going to be. Hell, even I'm guilty of this. Curve was kind of going under the radar at this point, and as a controller player, that tends to happen pretty often in modern Fortnite. Ever since aim assist have been nerfed and mouse and keyboard players have gotten so ridiculously good, controller players often aren't viewed as the future of the game, given how smart you have to be while being mechanical on a much more difficult input. Controller placements had fallen off, as they hadn't won an FNCS on a major region since Miro won globals in 2023, almost 3 years ago, and a controller player hadn't won a major on EU or NA since Bylo won with Peterbot in Chapter 3 Season 2, about 4 years ago. Given this, it's no surprise Curve was overlooked in his trio, but he still consistently kept improving his placements. After globals, Curve seemed to have a bit of a teammate roulette, not having consistent teammates over a long period of time, playing tournaments with Reet, Ominished, Shadow, and even queuing with Rapid for multiple tournaments. But we knew those two probably wouldn't stick together, with Rapid having his eyes set on playing with Cold. Curve's most consistent teammate was Craze, where they did alright across the tournaments they played together, but still split up. It did feel like Curve was just being viewed as another tier 2 pro, going from teammate to teammate, but Kanata was the first tier 1 to take a chance on him. Because Kanata's duo Arc had to move back home away from Dallas and NA Central due to the difficulty of traveling back and forth, Kanata needed to find a duo quick for EWC. At this point, Kanata was playing Battle Royale with Rapid, but Rapid was locked into EWC with Cold, and so Kanata and Curve ended up playing EWC together. Kanata and Curve actually end up doing really well in the second EWC finals, and they're actually in a position to qualify for the LAN going into the last game. And then this happened.
However, they are not in the clear by any means. It's only 30-40 points separating.
This is exactly what I'm talking about.
This is
The shock and slow launcher.
Because we have so much more Fortnite ahead of us. Curve's got every right to... Oh.
Taken down by a completely broken exotic weapon. It really didn't seem fair. Curve missed out on another LAN qual spot due to something mostly out of his control. It didn't really seem like Kanata and Curve were going to stick as a duo either. Well, if you've been following the storyline up to this point, we're right after the second EWC finals, where we had Veno who was just dropped and Curve not qualifying. So on March 1st, we got this tweet. This took the community by surprise. Veno, one of the greats of the game, had moved over 5,000 miles to Dallas to play with a tier 2 up-and-coming player, whose best Grands placement up till then was a 9th place. And not only that, he was on controller. People really wondered why Veno didn't pick up Kanata, but Veno saw on Curve what many people didn't realize: a true winner. Curve and Veno immediately started off with a bang, placing second in their first Div Cup finals together, which nobody really expected. These two consistently placed well in tournaments after this, placing 5th, 6th, and 7th in the Div Cups leading up to Grand Finals, and 3rd in an Eval Cup, and they cemented themselves as a top team on NA Central. Not only were they performing well in tournaments leading up to Grands, they had the most points out of any team that didn't win a game for an automatic qualification for Grand Finals in the Heat qualifiers, looking really good going into Major 1. I won't go super into detail on how they did this, but if you want to know how, check out this video I made on it. They were looking really solid going into Grands, but still, most people didn't even have them in their top 5 going into finals. They were generally around the 6th or 7th spot, for most predictions, but nobody had them winning really. And it makes sense. Their placements were good, but not great previously, and people had forgotten how good Veno was, and Curve was a young controller player. Not only that, Veno was seemingly very nervous going into Grand Finals. You could tell how much this day meant to him. They had 12 games to prove the doubters wrong, and going into day 1, we would see if these nerves were actually present or not. In game 1 of 6, we saw Curve and Veno land at their normal spot of North Battlewood. They'd like to land on this hill here to look for early tags, and Curve is actually able to get a kill out the air to start the game. This first zone pull is really good for them, so they're just able to set up a huge surge tower on top of a hill near Battlewood and spend a lot of time looting. They're able to stay in their surge tower and look for tags until the end of the 4th zone, and when the 5th zone pulls, they instantly overdrive to where it pulls and box up on the edge of zone here. It's really valuable to watch the map so you can instantly rotate when the next zone appears, moving before other players, allowing yourself to take a good position if your rotate is clear like it is for Curve and Veno. Because they got in early, they can look back on late players, where Veno is able to pick up a kill here. Unfortunately though, the next zone pull is not good for them, as it was a max pull, where they try and overdrive, but this team hadn't begun the rotate yet despite having a tough rotation ahead of them, and they had to stagger before shockwaving again. Veno and Curve are able to run up the hill here using other players' old walls to make it up. Getting on top of a hill like this can often make rotations easier due to natural cover, where players who are below the mountain wouldn't really have good sight lines on them. Unfortunately though, there were already quite a lot of people on top of this hill here, and they just keep getting shot at. Veno gets hit hard, and Electro and Ulk notice this, where Electro jumps in on him, but Veno is able to one-shot him with the Chaos Reloader before getting finished off by Ulk, unfortunately. Curve goes to try and fight Ulk, but Ulk's gone by now, and Creon and Dragon are already on the loot, so Curve backs off. Curve is now forced to solo clutch, and he finds a kill on the Cooper on top of his own builds, and another kill on the Reed who he had previously hit for white health, and is able to finish off. Curve plays out as a solo as long as he can, taking Storm to get every second of survival possible, but goes down in 14th. A 5-kill 14th, putting them in 10th place. A decent start, but not what they were looking for. Game 2 starts similarly, landing at the hill at Battlewood for tags, and they start looting up. They play their early game a little differently though. See, they can tell the zone will be a far pull, so often they would just start rotating really fast, but instead they lurk back into zone, where they know Electro and Ulk are likely going to be playing on the vending machine here, looking to play Storm to avoid other players due to this far zone pull. They lurk for 2 minutes straight here, knowing that Ulk and Electro were eventually going to show up on the vending machine, and they would have a shot on them, and they're able to start up the fight with a big tag. Electro and Ulk try and disengage, and Curve and Veno split a pizza for white heals, and they notice Ulk is behind a wood wall and a freshly built brick wall, and they're able to 3-2-1 spray his wall and blitz him before he's ready, taking him out. Electro boxes up above them, but he's really weak from the fight and hasn't had time to heal due to their pressure, where Curve and Veno pick 2 separate angles and can spray Electro from both sides to take him down here. Curve and Veno take their time in zone, farming their mats back up to cap before overdriving in and sneaking through old builds and Dark Dominion buildings. They do make an interesting play here though. They take all of the builds around the vending machine here and sit on it even past when the 4th zone is done pulling, where they buy a ton of white heals. By sitting on this vending machine, they force other teams to come to them who are trying to play zone. 2 teams try and get to the vending machines they've claimed, and when they finally end up fighting G-Money and Magma, who are forced to try and break in, Veno gets hit hard but can instantly heal back up using the vending machine. Curve was able to take out Magma here to Storm though, since they claimed the vending machine, where Veno's able to clean up G-Money for 2 relatively free kills due to good planning. Veno and Curve can now overdrive to zone, where they make it in, heal up, and have a good pull for the 6th zone here, where they're able to full tarp in with some extra mats they found nearby. Veno notices Blake and Preston on the low ground, and the fact that he's always crouching ensures they don't have visual audio on him, where Curve and Veno blitz Blake and are able to push and easily finish off Preston in an easy 2v1 here for 2 more kills. Curve and Veno go back into their old tarp here so they can overdrive from the highest point possible so they have a clear path to zone. For the 8th zone, instead of launching with the overdrives to rotate, Veno and Curve overdrive in their box for the effect and decide to run, as they've noticed to rotate through the middle here with no action on low ground and in these builds, and they're able to set up a really nice tarp here on a middle layer. Madden and then Sniper Dude run into their tarp and they end up getting a free kill on Sniper Dude, and Veno throws an extra fizz down here to pick up 2 bigs to set up for the next rotate. We see a classic Veno tarp, sprint jumping and bumping his head, and he notices Agers and Rituals on the mid ground. Most players would tarp single metal walls here, but Veno also places stairs to double reinforce them, making sure that Agers and Ritual can't take his wall and pre-edit them or spray them. They continue to rotate, and Veno actually does end up in Agers' box here, but hits him super hard, forcing him to back off. Veno doesn't get greedy though, even though Agers is on 1 HP, and instead goes back to Curve, who is keeping their tarp going on a lower layer now. They keep tarping on the mid ground and overdrive across and reconnect to continue their tarp. Curve and Veno decide to try and play for height here since it looks pretty free, where they fizz overdrive up, but Veno gets lasered by Higgs on his way up, and Curve gets wiped by clicks. It didn't turn out to be a very good height call, but they still ended up with a 7-kill 10th, a very solid game, moving them into 7th place. Game 3 didn't go as well though, as Curve and Veno play Storm here with the zone pulling up to Wonky Lane. Curve picks up a kill here, and they get a really good zone pull ahead of the 6th zone and can make it in. They're able to fight this 3rd party here, where Veno takes down Agers, and Curve is able to take out Dragon. They overdrive ahead of the 7th zone, but when they overdrive in, Curve accidentally opens up where Javi and Aminish are staring at them, and Veno goes down, and Curve follows shortly after for a 3-kill 25th place. Game 4 didn't go much better either. They went for a lurk play on Ulk and Electro, and Veno goes down early, leaving Curve as a solo, and Curve was pushed when he went to reboot Veno with essentially nothing, where he goes down in 42nd. Curve and Veno had fallen way out of the top 10 now, and it looked like the nerves might be getting to them due to some uncharacteristic mistakes they were making. In Game 5, Curve gets a kill out of the air by landing on the Salt Tower, and they go about looting Battlewood normally here. Curve and Veno again make a lurk play on Ulk and Electro off spawn here, and Curve gets a massive shot onto Electro by lurking up extremely close to open up the fight. And Veno takes down Ulk at some point, who is invisible thanks to replay mode. Veno and Curve again make a play in the Storm, where Veno beams Toronto, overdrives on him, and full pieces him for another kill. Veno and Curve continue to play Storm here, healing up as they refarm and loot more, and Slips tries to reboot Toronto, not realizing that Curve and Veno are still in Battlewood here playing Storm. Curve overdrives onto the freshly rebooted Toronto for an easy kill, and Veno fizz overdrives over to Slips, where he beams him and they set up a pinch, where Curve can break his wall and finish him easily here. Curve and Veno hit the inner loop now, which they like to do when they play Storm here, as they have confidence in their fighting ability if they run into anyone down here. Curve and Veno still decide to tank Storm in the 4th zone though, but the 5th zone opens up to them here, so they can tank Storm until the zone pulls to them. An important note about their positioning is that they don't play full dead side, and rather get as far into the zone as they can while still having full access to dead side, so that if the zone pulls far for everybody else, they won't have to travel across all of dead side where they would get held by everyone. The 6th zone opens up and they instantly start running here, going through the canyon and under the bridge using natural cover and overdriving once to get in. Curve and Veno are on a lower elevation relative to the rest of the lobby, and when the 7th zone pulls, they reposition instantly so they aren't the first players to have to overdrive in, and can overdrive from a higher layer with a better view on the lobby. They fizz overdrive for the 7th zone, and going into the 8th zone, they're able to wrap on the right side of zone, where they're eventually able to take a high layer. The zone pulls up the mountain, and they are able to take a good layer, but are forced to drop and try and get kills as they've run out of mats. Curve is able to take down Higgs, and they make it to front side but are complete shambles, where Veno goes down. Curve gets one last knock on the Rapid, but goes down before he gets kill credit, for an 8 kill 11th place, pushing them up to 12th place. Going into Game 6, they needed a good game here to even have a chance at winning the tournament going into Day 2, as they were a fair bit behind first at this point. They had a pretty normal early game, where they loot up Battlewood, and a note I want to make is that Veno uses overdrives when looting to move around quicker, since they're pretty common this season and you can find more. And this quick looting allows him and Curve to either rotate before other players, or set up a lurk player while other players are still looting. We see the latter take place, where Veno sneaks up on Tyler and Chance, and he's able to tag both of them. Veno pressures from one side and Curve overdrives to the other to set up a pinch, and Veno's able to spray into Tyler's box while he's moving and distracted, who's already weak, and take him out. Curve did get hit really hard though, but heals up with enough time to make another pinch on a Chance, double spraying him, making sure that he makes a mistake. And notice how no matter where Chance moves, they're always repositioning so they're pressuring different angles to ensure he can't heal or fight one of them without being shot in the back. Curve is able to clean up Chance to finish up the fight. They play in Storm and actually end up double shockwaving onto Veer, as they notice him and Threats are fairly separated, where Veno lasers him out of the air, and they set up another pinch to quickly take out Veer before Threats can get there to help him. The kill on the Threats is very easy at this point, where they just follow him with overdrives and laser him when Threats overdrives himself. Curve and Veno aren't done though. They notice a team at this fishing hut here and fizz overdrive on them so they can blitz them with no visual audio before they can react, where this team would never expect someone to dive bomb on them so deep in zone. Veno shreds Toronto, and it's an identical kill on a Slips as it was to Threats, where Slips is forced to use his overdrives and builds, and they can just beam him out of the air when he runs out. Veno and Curve have 6 kills by the 3rd zone, and I'm sure you've noticed that with these kills they're getting, they don't play fair. To start these fights, they will often lurk or double overdrive to blitz one player to create 2 different 2v1s. The next evolution in Fortnite skill is knowing how to create advantage states in fights, and when it's a good time to push versus when it's not. Curve and Veno have mastered this better than any other team I've watched. They move towards the inner loop again to get to zone, and they actually end up box fighting Cold and Rapid here, and are able to easily take down Cold when they isolate him and Rapid is below. Curve and Veno make it out of the inner loop, and fizz overdrive into zone after they get the storm sickness warning, using the fizz more as a rotation item than actually for any healing purpose. Going into the 6th zone, they overdrive in and run over the top of a hill, where they can cut sightlines for most of the lobby. They overdrive for the 7th zone again, and pick up a really nice high layer here to look back and set up for another rotate, but Veno gets full awareness check when he looks back, where Acorn and Bolts can just open up from this cone here for a free kill, leaving Curve as a solo. Curve finds a kill onto Higgs on backside before he overdrives in and tries to play out his mats, but goes down to Peterbot for an 8 kill 19, a decent game, moving them into 10th place to end the day. It was clear that nobody else in the lobby had the firepower that Curve and Veno had, but they kept making uncharacteristic mistakes and going down early, causing them to be over 100 points out of first place. Nobody thought they would win grands at this point, but I wouldn't be making this video if they at least didn't make Day 2 interesting, would I? Going into the first game of Day 2, it started off pretty normal. They got a good zone pull and are able to set up on a hill for some surge tags. The 5th zone is a far pull, so they fizz overdrive after the teams in their way had moved, and the 6th zone pulls back to them. Curve and Veno overdrive when the storm gets close to them ahead of the 7th zone pull, and then again when the 8th zone starts to pull, where Veno elevates up a layer and full tarps on the right side of zone. This is where we start to see the Curve and Veno we really expected though. They overdrive for the 9th zone, and Veno is able to catch Agers in his tarp here, where he almost gets out, but they're able to pressure and get the refresh. They fizz and run into Storm here to wrap around and take a higher layer on the right side of zone, their preferred tarping spot. Curve and Veno notice Visuals as a solo on the mid ground, and are able to spray and pre-edit him to take him out. The 10th zone pulls back across, so they cut over the top of players' tarps here before they can react to the zone pull. Then Curve and Veno make a play they often make around the 10th zone, where they run into zone, throw a fizz bomb, eat pizza to tank zone, place a wall between them so they can both overdrive to height and not launch each other further into storm. They beam enough out of the air on their way up, forcing Salt to drop, and they now have control of the high ground. They hear an overdriver grow up, so they build above them instantly, and Curve is able to laser Carillion out of the air. They tarp on the back of height here, making sure that if anyone overdrives up, they only have to cover one side, being in front of them, instead of all 360 degrees. Veno sprays down for another kill. It drops where he gets a really nice side jump kill on the Sphinx here, leaving Muzz as a solo who goes down in the back of Storm here. A 9 kill win to start the day. That's more like it. This game launched them into 5th place, only 71 points behind Cold and Rapid in first, instilling them back in the race for the win. Let's see if they could repeat this dominance in Game 8 though. To start the game, Curve was able to get a pick on a player gliding in, and they loot as normal. This looked to be another decent pull for them, so Curve sets up in a surge base on the hill while Veno loots, but this time, they need to move a little earlier during the 4th zone. They don't move though, and instead let the 4th zone pull and play Storm, so they can find a clean route to the 5th zone when that pulls, where they base up in a really good spot. They actually get another 6th zone pull here, and Veno notices Zen and Bucky getting sprayed where Curve is able to take out Zen. Veno is able to pick up another pick on the Noisy here, and as normal, they overdrive and take a high layer and metal for both the 7th zone rotate as well as their 8th zone rotate. Veno and Curve look through their floor since they're on such a high layer, giving them a large view of below them to find a refresh on the reap, where they tarp on the side of zone and overdrive and take another high layer and metal. Noticing a pattern, Curve sprays Ritual in the back of zone here, and we see another classic Veno tarp, where he wraps in metal on the right side of zone here on an elevated layer. And now it's the 10th zone, which is time for them to make their height play by running into zone and Fizz overdriving up. If you've watched my video on Peterbot and Pollo's reload win, you know that they like to take height later, around the 9th or 10th zone. Originally, I thought this was more reload specific, but it seems like it's more of a shockwave meta specific thing. Because playing height is so grief in earlier zones due to shockwaves, taking it later when teams are more shambles and less teams can contest you is a great game plan, especially when you're as strong of a mid-ground team as Curve and Veno. They take height, and Veno finds a kill on the Sphinx here, and while they run out of mats, they can use their overdrives to stall and play on top of others' builds. Veno gets a kill on the Neko, and builds back up with the Siphon mats. Curve gets another kill and goes into zone for some loot, where he's able to beam Jargu out of the air for 9 kills total. It's now a 2v1 and they have height, and Tyler goes up and manages to take down Curve. Veno's now on the low ground with one build, and this happens.
Down low, they're refusing to give him a chance, so Tyler had no choice but to go up above. Big shot on the Curve. Tyler is trying to make dreams come true. He lands another shot on the Veno down below, trying to deny the back-to-back. Tyler, he just needs the one chance, but he is already down. He's by himself, 1v1. Zone is closing, 3 HP. Tyler clutches up.
They choked the final 2v1 with height. Not a good ending for them. Were they getting nervous now that they were making it towards the top? Regardless, this was an enormous game for that. A second with 9 kills was huge, launching them into 2nd place after being 10th just 2 games ago, right on the tail of Cold and Rapid. Game 9 they land in Battlewood, but in the 2nd zone they head over this hill here to make this lurk play and end up doing this.
Get that momentum going, but Veno and Curve actually find Magma and G-Monster right here, try to set up. I want to know if he's going to go for the high ground player or the low ground ones. G-Monster's exposed as well.
I think they might just go for a straight chop, but Magma's dropping down low, so he's probably gonna wait for the window to open. He go ahead and disengage out. G-Money gets spotted out on the other side. Don't take your pick at this point, because Veno and Curve are ready to go all in. Boxes up one, slides into the box onto Magma. Now they're gonna go ahead and take down G-Money. A quick 2 eliminations.
Something that sets great players apart from the pros is how they treat fights in grand finals. Veno and Curve had these kills planned out. These were not impromptu decisions, rather meticulous plays made from studying their opponents. Veno had lots of lurk plans for different situations. They're able to steal G-Money and Magma's surge base after this, and take down Wagers and Slepsy in the mid game. They have numerous good zone pulls here, and are able to play early height. They get quite a few kills from height going into the end game, and actually end up playing a mid-ground layer, as playing early height is a little difficult in the meta as we've already established. They're able to look up for height though since no one has it. Again, a little earlier than they normally do in the 8th zone, but they're able to set up so high they're pretty much safe from shockwavers, and they're in an amazing position on height with 8 kills, looking to run away with the tournament at this point. But then, Veno jumps and accidentally lands on Curve's head, launching him off the side where he lands in the water, but instantly gets deleted due to his bad luck. Curve is now a solo on height and tries to play it, but a team destroys him by overdriving onto height and taking him down. And who else was the team now on height who goes on to win the game but Peterbot and Pollo? Peterbot and Pollo's 10 kill win launched them into first. Overtaking Curve and Veno's very good game here, putting them in second by 6 points. There were 6 teams within 50 points of first though. This tournament was going down to the wire in the final 3 games. Going into Game 10, Curve and Veno needed a big game here. It started out really well, where Curve made a really smart play to land on the hill, zipline up, and spray the teams at the inner loop since he realized they were contested for 2 free kills. They got another good zone pull here, where Curve builds a surge base, but the 5th zone pull is not very good for them, where they lose a lot of resources trying to get in here. Going into the 6th zone, they notice G-Money and Magma going for the vending machine mid-rotation, meaning they're probably weak, where they double spray Magma and easily clean up G-Money again, taking out this team for the 2nd time on a vending machine. They get another kill and are able to make it into the 8th zone here, and take a high layer where they notice some overdrivers, and Curve actually takes down Pollo here, who is in first, leaving Peterbot as a solo, and Veno gets a kill on a Madden as well. They take a mid-ground layer here as they don't have very many mats to play height this early, and they've pretty much run out of builds when Curve goes down, leaving Veno as a solo with essentially nothing. But Veno saw this as a perfect opportunity to show everyone who dropped him why they made a mistake, and he does this. An 11 kill second, one of the greatest solo clutches I've ever seen. This launched them into first place, 44 points ahead of Agers and Ritual in second, far ahead of Peterbot and Pollo now. They could run away with this tournament, but they needed to keep the momentum up in game 11. Going into game 11 though, they play this early game a little differently than they have the rest of the tournament. They know teams lower down on the leaderboard might be looking for them to take them out, so they loot up extremely quickly and overdrive across the map to rotate quickly and avoid anyone who may try and push them by going to Sus Studios, blending in with the other teams. It's worth a note here that they wore skins they hadn't worn the whole tournament, maybe to throw up the scent for anyone who wants to push them. But this could just be me cooking too hard. They stay in Storm and actually go back into Battlewood now to play Storm, and again re-enter Zone in the 5th zone in the good spot here, where they pull the 6th zone. Veno is taking slices from this pizza here, and seemingly learning from his mistake earlier in the tournament against Bolts and Acorn, notices Flex below the cone where he resets his wall and easily takes him out. They're then able to double spray Light, Flex's duo here to get the full team wipe, for a huge refresh. Curve and Veno are then able to look back on the rotating players, where Veno picks up 2 more kills by spraying here. They get in for the 7th zone by overdriving, and Curve can look back for a kill on the Kingaling here. Veno and Curve notice Toronto running above their builds, where they can open up and then hit him hard and spray him to finish off the kill. They're on a good mid-ground layer, and are able to drop down Pollo, who got separated from Peterbot, leaving Pete as a solo, a big kill onto direct competition. Veno picks up another kill on Nicole, and he continues to tarp on the mid-ground, where he's able to beam Peterbot on rotate to finish off the duo, what seemed like the finishing blow for them. Curve finds a kill on the back of Zone, and Curve and Veno decide to fizz overdrive up for height here, which Veno's able to take, but Clix is back in Zone, managing to keep height for Clix and Higgs. Curve and Veno rat around in old builds here, and they just don't have much resources at this point, going down for a 10 kill 6th place, a great game. They were now about 80 points above the rest of the field, which you may think, oh, they've basically won the tournament at this point. A win is 65 points, and if Curve and Veno get a few points, there's no way a team can catch them. But not quite. See, there were 4 teams within 10 points of each other who could feasibly win the tournament, as long as they took down Curve and Veno early, putting a massive target on their back. The question was, who would try and take them out? Cold and Rapid, 2 of the best fighters on the region, Acorn and Bolts, feeling hot coming off a Game 11 win? Could it be Agers and Ritual potentially? Or the obvious candidates, Peterbot and Pollo. Peterbot and Pollo are known for taking matters into their own hands, most notably when Peterbot landed on Pollo himself in Major 3 of last year on the final game to take them out, even though Peterbot was about 100 points behind Pollo's team. They have a first or nothing mentality, and Curve and Veno were aware of this, so going into Game 12, it was down to where Peterbot and Pollo would land, and this is what happened.
People always have that same conversation. Who will land on first place? And right now, it looks like we have an interesting situation breaking down. Peterbot and Pollo look to contest Curve and Veno, but Curve and Veno already seen that one coming.
Peterbot and Pollo landed on the hill near Battlewood to try and take down Curve and Veno, but Curve and Veno make the read that Peterbot and Pollo would try and land on them, or at least near them, and they stole Squibbly Shores, Peterbot and Pollo's POI, right out from under their nose, making a risky call that they wouldn't land here. Pete and Pollo end up fighting a team at the gas station they might think is Veno and Curve, and the fight goes like this.
They probably noticed that Curve and Veno weren't at the Battlewood. They immediately simply engaged, possibly disengaged. Choice is definitely theirs, especially since it's taken a little bit longer than we'd hoped. Peterbot lands a shot, but Pollo goes down. Raven is escaping back inside of the building. That puts Peterbot in a 1v2.
all set this far behind. Peterbot, though, in a world of trouble here. Plenty of enemy builds. He's going to have to back off. Shot through the wall as well.
The biggest thing here is Peterbot was able to get the materials from Poyo, but Raven lands another monster shot of build. CDZ and Raven really don't have no materials down below, so they can't not fight upwards, so he has to drop down low. Peterbot again trying to take the fight to them. And
passive now, they had an opportunity to finish up this Elam. They back off instead. Rapid and Cold show up, and they are cleaning up house. Just to show and flex that they're here as well.
Peterbot and Poyo go down, but the tournament wasn't over yet. Cold and Rapid just finished them off, and the other contenders are still up. And Veno and Curve still need a few points to secure the win here, making sure that other teams can't catch them. But they don't just try and get a few placement points. Instead, they do the exact opposite. A 9-kill 10th place, stamping their victory with dominance, telling the lobby to show some respect. And even with everything on the line, they showed they were flat out better than everyone else, and were going to pick fights in the early game anyways. Nobody fought as well as them the whole tournament. They were by far the best mid-ground team in a grief height meta, and they had the best solo clutches too. Veno proved the doubters wrong and became the first ever player to win an FNCS on the 2 major regions of NA and EU. An insane accomplishment. And Curve showed why he shouldn't be overlooked, becoming the first controller player to win an FNCS on a major region since 2023, and an FNCS major on NA or EU since 2022. History had been made, and these two players will never be overlooked again. If you enjoy content like this, subscribing to the channel or joining would mean the world to me, as that really helps me make more content like this. And if this kind of video is your thing, you definitely would enjoy this video on, in my opinion, the greatest grand finals of all time. Thanks so much for watching.